Director of the Equinio project, Inia Florian Iman. Thanks so much for your company this Sunday. I know it's early, but I've enjoyed your company. Shall we kick off with a really important story? It's in The Observer, Inia, and it's all about student debt. Indeed.
I mean, it does feel like this is a mounting potential political scandal. But there was some protest recently outside of the House of Commons in relation to the huge student debt that a lot of graduates are being left with. It's an average of 53,000, and Rachel Reeves, obviously the Chancellor, froze the threshold, the salary threshold to which people will start paying it back. And that has obviously meant that at a lot lower salaries, people
will be dragged in then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realise how enormous student debt is. So the interest is, for many people, it's extortionate. Is the retail price index plus 3%. So if you're a graduate, your earnings are kind of average, you can find huge amounts of your salary being garnished. And I think it's becoming increasingly challenging for Labour because, for example, there's a lot of younger MPs now that have student debt themselves and are then, realising that this is actually an issue that they can push and it's not something that they can just wipe away. And I think many politicians over the years have obviously made promises to abolish it, famously, of course, the Liberal Democrats. But I even think, Keir Starmer, when he was in his leadership campaign, made certain discussions about doing something on student debt. So it feels like a lot of young people have got a very hard deal. I'm somebody that has been left with a huge amount of student debt and been paying it off for years, and it's basically not gone down at all.
I'm old enough to remember that moment that I got the letter that said my final payment had been accepted, my debt was done, But many people, including both of you, may never...
No, I can't even imagine that.
Anytime soon.
About a year and a half ago, I'd been paying quite large, £650 a month was my student loan repayment. Now, for most people in Middle England, that'll be their mortgage payment each month, to give it a bit of perspective about what people have to pay back. And I've been paying this off for about 2 years at that level. And I thought, I hadn't looked at the debt calculator in a long time. I hadn't thought about it. We were told not to worry about it. And I thought, surely I've paid it off by now. I went back and it was higher than what I borrowed in the first place.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And the truth is that we were missold because the terms of the interest being RPI plus 3% was not what we were told when we took out that debt. And so we now have a situation where it's a 9% tax rise on graduates. If you said to anyone in this country, do you think we should put up income tax by 9%? There would be outrage.
Yeah.
No government has ever done that, except that by the back door, that's exactly what they did to many of the most productive members of society under the age of 45.
Just quickly to add, not just in terms of the agreement for the loan that's been missold. For many young people, there was the target of 50% going to university. It was told to many young people that this was the only route to getting success. And whilst the government has removed that target for 50%, we're seeing that the jobs aren't really meeting the pressure for people to go to university. So they're taking out these huge loans, going to universities, leaving with not great graduate prospects, but also a huge amount of debt that's just going up and up and up.
The other side of this, then, is investment in our universities. Currently, with restrictions on visas from people abroad being able to study here, the amount that they bring in terms of fees, and that's another issue too that I don't think's really spoken about very much.
Well, this is the thing, because actual tuition fees for current students have barely moved in what must be the best part of a decade. And so universities themselves are struggling to have the cash flow to keep going. So they're taking in more foreign students that can pay 20, 30 grand in some cases a year for their tuition. And so you have this crazy situation where graduates have a disproportionate burden to what they expected that damages their productivity and the economy in so many ways because they don't have money to spend, and the universities have less money in the pocket at the moment. And so, it needs a massive overhaul. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is quoted in The Observer. He was president of the NUS. the National Union of Students, that is. He says that it's completely demoralising, but the current government's line, they didn't introduce any of these rules, they didn't change the rules, but they're standing by it because it would cost £6 billion a year if you were to wipe this debt.
Yeah, and then there are many conversations. I know that I have it with my husband now, I have 2 kids, and whether we could even afford both children to go to university because of the cost and then that future debt.
Yeah, I think it's, important thing that parents now have to think about is university,
the right route.
Exactly, even discussions about AI and things like that. Maybe vocational and other practical jobs may well actually overtake universities in terms of hopefully better opportunities for young people.
I tell you what AI will never take away, doing the dishes and doing the ironing, aka the mum's job at the moment. OK, let's move on then to youth unemployment, Benjamin.
Well,
higher than Europe, apparently, according to this article.
Yeah, so for the first time since records began, which was the year 2000, the UK has a youth unemployment, which is people 16 to 24, and it's now at 15.3%, which is just a nudge higher than the European average. Now, this has never been the case before, and various experts, economic experts, but also people from left-leaning think tanks, are saying that the fairly significant, the biggest ever rise in the national minimum wage is why hiring has fallen, job rates have fallen, and that's disproportionately affecting young workers because those are the ones that need to be trained up. Labour also has a policy that the graduated inclination of minimum wage, so getting a different level at 16 or 21, they're removing that so that you get the same pay whether you're 18 or 22.
Yeah.
I think that this is quite an important story because I think for a long time it's been an easy political win for politicians to say that they're increasing the minimum wage, and that seemed like it was something that was benefiting people on low incomes. But the reality is now, and the evidence is becoming increasingly clear, that actually is locking out a lot of people. Young people, for example, obviously cost more to hire because they may need more
inexperience.
Exactly.
Taking that chance.
Exactly. They may need more training and investment. And then because the cost of employing people has gone up under this government as well, what we're finding is that a lot of employers are just not taking young people on. And then we also have this huge rise in, young people claiming benefits. This is a bad recipe, effectively, for young people's prospects. If they're not being hired, then they're not getting the experience, they're not getting the training, and then it's going to be much harder for them to enter the job market later on.
And then all of this potentially being linked back to experiences in the school classroom, which is our next story, which is in The Sun. They're reporting that millions of children are essentially refusing to go to school every morning. Which is, this is a really huge problem and a huge story in here, isn't it?
It's pretty shocking, and it's something that has been talked about or come back to over the last couple of years or so. This investigation by The Sun, 3.3 million children have refused to go to school at least once in the last 12 months. 330,000 have missed 2 weeks or more of education. And, the story speaking to various families and young people who are saying that they're worried about bullying, they have, various mental health conditions, they have anxiety. And this is obviously, when we were talking about employment, this is another thing. If they're not getting the education as well, then this is really harming their prospects. And I think particularly since COVID, this has been a really big problem. Obviously, young people were told that they shouldn't be in school because they were potentially spreading the disease. I think to some extent it has slightly normalised in some households young people not going to school at all. And I think that education, particularly post-COVID, has been something that has struggled to catch up in terms of getting standards back to what they were.
Yeah, the article here really focusing on child-led fear around the classroom, being marked down for not bringing the right pen or forgetting a book, and that being one of the reasons cited in their research that they don't want to go, they don't want to be in that environment.
I mean, what's interesting here, it says that the problem is as prevalent among the high-achieving as lower-achieving students. So it's not as though it's simply people that aren't engaging on an academic level. It's also people that do well with their studies. I mean, look, maybe I sound unkind, but I'm afraid, the idea that you have to have the right pen and the right book and you have to dress appropriately for school are just the rules. And, people do have to, you know, you do have to raise kids to get over that because the workplace will be even less forgiving.
So resilience training in some
I think I really don't think there should be any get out of those kind of standards, because then you're not helping those young people to develop into useful members of society. But I think there's a backdrop to this, which is that unlike any of ours, frankly, we weren't going home and looking on our phones and at social media all the time, and that is the only thing that a current teenager knows, and that creates this underlying anxiety, I think, in lots of young people that then starts to project out in all these scenarios and becomes very hard to manage. And the truth is that because we, policymakers, politicians, you know, didn't grow up like that, I don't think we're being very quick to come up with the answers to help those fundamental issues.
I think you make a really good point. I was heading to my son's reception area in his school to drop something off, and I presumably believe it was a Year 6 student who handed over a smartphone, because it goes in a little box before they go in, and there was something about that really shocked me. I've got an 8- and 5-year-old, so having personal devices isn't something that we have in our house, and hopefully we can put that off for as long as possible. But it was that moment that I felt like, to your point, Benjamin, that the use of social media, the use of smartphones and their ability to have them 24/7 is a huge problem, and is fueling issues of anxiety and not wanting to be in the classroom. I don't know.
And I mean, I think it's Australia that has now moved to ban social media, for example, for under 16s. And I think there is a growing kind of political conversation in the UK about smartphones and social media as well. And I think for a lot of parents, it feels like it's quite difficult to make it just about what you do in your own household. Whilst that is understandable and that is something that can be done, there is a growing sense that actually there needs to be some kind of wider societal action, because obviously one kid might not have a smartphone, but then another kid has one, and then they're having that.
An 8-year-old, are you starting to see the awareness or the envy of other people that have access to it?
No, not at this stage. We use devices in the house, but that's under supervision, so no one can go to a separate room to watch or use a device. So it's not an issue, but it's on the horizon for me.
It is.
It's on the horizon for many people with primary age kids at primary school.
The problem is as well that we know this even as adults. It's training your mind, it's retraining your mind with the algorithms, with the addiction.
But it's knowledge,
endorphins.
isn't it? And it's empowerment of understanding how these devices work.
Yeah,
I think's key.
and I think that's what the difficulty of the debate is. I mean, I've got a 7-month-old baby, and you think, on the one hand, should we keep these technologies away from them? But then at the same time, we're going into a future where this is going to be, you know, ubiquitous, part and parcel of life. So where do you kind of go with it? I think this is the thing that parents are really struggling with.
So true. I wanted to end, we've only got a minute left. It was the royal story, the front page of...
Sunday Times?
Sunday Times.
Yes.
Was it a picture? Take it away.
Well, this is the boss of
Oh, no, it was the Sunday Mirror I wanted to end on.
So,
talk us through.
Yeah, this is Prince William. So there's a new
Can we
royal
hold it
book.
up? Because I don't think...
There's a new memoir by the royal editor of the Sunday Mirror, the Daily Mirror, and he's talks about how Prince William has discussed his agony and his shock that he told friends how it was completely disorientating that Princess Catherine was diagnosed with cancer. And it's a reminder among the sort of political and legal drama that family is in. There are two people here with a very difficult personal crisis.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time. More after the break.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?